A farmer with a 50-year-old rifle helped force the most powerful military on Earth to leave Vietnam. A $2,000 drone can now threaten a warship worth $500 million. No tanks, no jets, no uniforms. And yet again and again, it's fighters like this who beat superpowers. Here's exactly how they do it, and why it still works today. The rural guerrilla. These aren't soldiers you can spot on a parade ground. They live in the villages and farmlands they fight for. By day, they look like ordinary peasants. By night, they become something the enemy can't pin down. Rural guerrilla warfare grows out of the countryside itself. The fighters blend into local populations, use the land they know better than anyone, and refuse to fight on the invaders' terms. They don't need to win big battles. They only need to outlast the other side's patience. The Viet Cong mastered this against the United States in Vietnam. They built tunnel networks that stretched for miles under rice paddies and jungle. American troops with helicopters and napalm would clear a village by day. By night, the same fighters reappeared from underground, supplied by farmers who looked harmless. Their real weapon wasn't the old rifle or the homemade trap. It was time. They turned the war into a grinding contest of will, making occupations so expensive and endless that the superpower eventually walked away. Victory came not from conquering territory, but from making the other side quit. If the countryside stopped being safe for empires, the next question was obvious. What about the cities? The urban guerrilla. Now the fight moves into crowded streets, alleys, and apartment blocks. There is no jungle cover here. The city itself becomes the weapon. Urban guerrillas use speed and disappearance. They hit hard in a market square or government building, then melt into the civilian crowd before the response can land. The Battle of Algiers showed exactly how this works. FLN fighters turned the Casbah into a maze the French army could never fully control. Bombs went off in cafes, checkpoints got ambushed. Then the attackers vanished among thousands of ordinary people. The French poured in more troops and used harsher tactics. And that was the trap. Every heavy-handed crackdown created more anger than it killed. Urban guerrillas often win the information war more than the shooting war. Cameras, rumors, and public outrage do half the damage for them. The occupying force starts looking brutal and out of control, which only feeds the next wave of recruits. Cities give guerrillas cover that no forest can match. But what happens when there is no city to hide in at all? When the ground itself is open and empty? The desert guerrilla. Out here, the terrain offers no trees, no buildings, almost no water. Firepower means less than mobility and local knowledge. Desert guerrillas refuse direct fights. They raid railways, supply lines, wells, and lonely outposts, then disappear into the dunes before the enemy can form up. T.E. Lawrence and the Arab revolt against the Ottomans turned this into an art form. Instead of attacking strong garrisons head-on, they kept striking the Hejaz Railway. Every blown track forced the Ottomans to spread thin, repair, and escort. Controlling empty sand means nothing if you cannot move food, water, and ammunition across it. So the guerrillas targeted logistics, not land. They made the desert swallow the empire piece by piece. In open country, the side that understands the roads and the wells holds the real power, no matter how many rifles the other side lines up. From the flat emptiness of the desert, the fight climbs higher. Into the one place where outsiders tire just trying to arrive. The mountain guerrilla. Elevation becomes a fortress. Ridges, thin air, sudden weather, and paths only locals know turn the highlands into a natural stronghold. Mountain guerrillas enjoy near-total home field advantage. Outsiders exhaust themselves just reaching the fight. Fidel Castro's band in the Sierra Maestra of Cuba started with barely a dozen survivors after a disastrous landing. The mountains kept them alive. Government forces could not sustain long operations at that altitude and distance. Castro's group used the terrain to avoid annihilation long enough to grow, attract more fighters, and eventually topple the regime. Mountain campaigns often succeed less through dramatic combat wins and more through sheer survival. The enemy simply cannot keep pouring resources into a place that drains them dry. Stay alive long enough, and the mountains do the rest. For decades, terrain like this was the guerrilla's best friend. Jungles, deserts, cities, peaks. But the newest version of this fighter does not need any of that. What happens when the cover is no longer geography at all? The modern guerrilla. Technology replaced the jungle and the mountain. These fighters are decentralized, often operating in small cells with cheap drones, encrypted phones, and social media accounts. Asymmetry now comes through tools, not terrain. A $2,000 drone can threaten a warship that costs hundreds of millions. Houthi forces in Yemen have done exactly that, disrupting major shipping lanes with drones and missiles, despite having no real navy or air force. They do not need to conquer the ocean. They only need to make it too risky and expensive for everyone else. And the fight no longer ends when the explosion stops. Modern guerrillas win the perception war online as much as the physical one. Viral footage of a successful strike becomes a recruitment tool and a propaganda weapon stronger than any single bomb. A video reaches millions in minutes. That changes the political cost of the war faster than any body count. The same smartphone that coordinates an ambush also broadcasts it to the world. From jungles to deserts to smartphones, one truth has not changed in 100 years of asymmetric war. You do not need the biggest army to win. You just need the one that refuses to stop.